The crimson sunset painted the Montana sky as Brielle Edwards rode for her life, the thundering hooves of her stolen horse matching the pounding of her heart. She had escaped, but for how long? The burn on her shoulder where they had attempted to brand her like cattle stung with every jostle, a permanent reminder of what she was fleeing. Montana Territory, 1876. The land was as wild as the men who sought to tame it, and just as unforgiving. Brielle glanced over her shoulder, seeing nothing but dust and distant mountains. 3 days ago, she had been sold to the Blackwood gang by her stepfather to settle a gambling debt. 3 days of horror before she found the courage and opportunity to flee. Her horse began to falter, its breathing labored. She'd pushed the poor animal too hard, but desperation made her cruel. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Brielle spotted a small creek cutting through a grove of cottonwoods. She guided her exhausted mount toward the water, praying for a moment's respite. "Easy now," she whispered, sliding from the saddle, her legs nearly buckled beneath her, stiff from the long ride. 22 years old, and this was the first time she'd ever been truly alone. Her mother had died 6 months ago, leaving her with a stepfather who saw her as nothing but a burden than as a solution to his debts. The horse drank deeply as Brielle splashed water on her face. The wound on her shoulder had started bleeding again, seeping through the torn fabric of her dress. They had only managed to press the hot iron against her skin for a moment before she kicked over a lantern, causing enough chaos to make her escape. It wasn't a complete brand, but the partial mark was a searing reminder of how close she'd come to becoming property. A twig snapped in the darkness. Brielle froze, her heart leaping to her throat. "Don't move," a deep voice commanded. Slowly, she turned to see the silhouette of a man against the darkening sky. He sat tall on his horse, the brim of his hat casting shadows across his face. The unmistakable shape of a rifle rested in his hands, aimed directly at her. "I mean no harm," Brielle said, raising her trembling hands. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, keeping the rifle trained on her. As he stepped closer, moonlight revealed his features' strong jaw covered in several days' worth of stubble, piercing eyes that assessed her with cautious curiosity. "That's Blackwood's brand," he said, nodding toward her shoulder. Brielle's hand instinctively covered the mark. "They tried." "I escaped," he studied her for a long moment. "Name's Hunter Finley. This is my land you're trespassing on. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I'll go in the dark, with Blackwood's men likely hunting you." Hunter lowered his rifle. "That would be foolish." Brielle's legs finally gave out and she sank to the ground. "I have nowhere else to go," Hunter sighed, looking torn between caution and compassion. "My ranch is about a mile west. You can clean up there, rest for the night." "Why would you help me?" Brielle asked, suspicion edging her voice. A grim smile touched his lips. "Let's just say Sam Blackwood and I have history, bad history." Hunter helped Brielle onto her horse, then mounted his own. They rode in silence through the moonlit landscape, Brielle constantly glancing over her shoulder. "They won't find you tonight," Hunter assured her, "but tomorrow we'll need to figure something out. Blackwood doesn't take kindly to losing what he considers his property." The ranch house appeared as they crested a small hill, a sturdy 2-story structure with a wide porch and lamplight glowing from the windows. As they approached, a dog began barking, followed by the appearance of an older man with a shotgun. "Who you got there, boss?" the man called out. "Someone who needs help, Emmett," Hunter replied. "Put the shotgun away." Emmett lowered his weapon, eyeing Brielle warily as Hunter helped her dismount. "Take care of the horses," Hunter instructed Emmett before guiding Brielle toward the house. Inside, the ranch house was simple but comfortable worn furniture, a stone fireplace, and the lingering scent of coffee and tobacco. Hunter gestured toward a chair at the kitchen table. "Sit. I'll heat some water so you can clean that wound." Brielle sat stiffly, her body aching from the long ride and the terror of the past few days. "Thank you." Hunter moved around the kitchen with practiced efficiency, heating water and gathering clean cloths. When he returned to the table, he set a bottle of whiskey next to the basin of water. "This will hurt," he warned, gently pulling back the torn fabric of her dress to reveal the burn. Brielle bit her lip as he cleaned the wound, tears stinging her eyes but refusing to fall. "You're lucky," Hunter said. "It's not deep, they barely got started." "It felt deep enough," Brielle replied, wincing as he dabbed whiskey on the raw flesh. Hunter's hands were calloused but surprisingly gentle. "How did you end up with Blackwood?" The story spilled out of her mother's death, her stepfather's gambling, the debt that led to her being traded like livestock. Hunter listened silently, his jaw tightening as she described the moment they'd heated the branding iron. "Your stepfather needs a bullet," he said when she finished. "I just want to be free of them all," Brielle whispered. "I was heading north. I heard there's work for women in Helena." Hunter bandaged her shoulder, his expression thoughtful. "Blackwood won't stop looking, not just because you escaped, but because you've seen his operation. He's not just a rancher. He's running guns, selling to anyone with money, including renegade Indian bands." "How do you know all this?" Hunter's eyes darkened. "I was a U.S. Marshal for 8 years. Spent the last 2 trying to build a case against Blackwood. Then my partner was killed, and suddenly the government wasn't interested anymore." He stood, moving to a cabinet where he pulled out a clean shirt. "You can wear this. I'll show you where you can sleep." The upstairs bedroom was small but clean, with a patchwork quilt covering the bed and a basin of fresh water on the dresser. "Get some rest," Hunter said, lingering in the doorway. "We'll figure things out in the morning." Brielle nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. "Thank you, Mr. Finley." "Hunter," he corrected with a slight smile. "Just Hunter." Sleep came quickly despite her anxiety, the soft bed a luxury after days of terror. But her dreams were haunted by burning irons and men with cruel eyes. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, disorientation gripped her before memories of the previous night rushed back. She touched her bandaged shoulder, wincing at the tenderness. After washing her face and donning Hunter's oversized shirt, Brielle made her way downstairs to find Hunter and Emmett at the kitchen table. "Morning," Hunter said, rising to pour her coffee. "Hungry," Brielle nodded, acutely aware of how she must look hair tangled, wearing a man's shirt barefoot, but neither man seemed to care as Emmett pushed a plate of bacon and eggs toward her. "Thank you," she said, sitting down. The food was simple but tasted better than anything she could remember. "I've been thinking," Hunter said after she'd eaten. "Blackwood's men will be searching the area. It's not safe for you to leave, at least not yet." "I can't stay here," Brielle protested. "I'll bring trouble to your door." "Trouble's already at our door," Emmett grumbled. "Has been since the boss decided to take on Blackwood single-handed." Hunter shot Emmett a warning look. "The point is, you need somewhere safe, and we need to deal with Blackwood once and for all." "How?" Brielle asked. Hunter leaned forward. "I still have friends in the Territorial Marshal's office. With your testimony about the gun running, we might finally get the government to take action." "You want me to testify?" Fear knotted in Brielle's stomach. "They'll kill me." "Not if we do this right," Hunter assured her. "But first, we need to make sure Blackwood can't legally claim you as his property." Brielle's hand unconsciously moved to her shoulder. "How?" Hunter hesitated, exchanging a glance with Emmett. "The simplest way would be if you were married. A husband's claim would supersede any alleged purchase." Brielle stared at him, realization dawning. "You're suggesting a marriage of convenience," Hunter finished, "on paper only. It would give you legal protection while we build the case against Blackwood." The proposal hung in the air between them. Brielle studied Hunter's face, searching for any hint of deception or ulterior motive. She found none, only a straightforward offer of protection. "What happens after, when Blackwood is dealt with, the marriage can be annulled," Hunter said. "You'd be free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want." It was an extraordinary offer from a man she barely knew, yet she sensed no threat from him, only a steadfast determination that somehow included her safety. "Why would you do this for me?" Hunter's gaze was direct. "Because no one should be branded as property, and because helping you might finally bring Blackwood to justice." Brielle took a deep breath. "When would we do this?" "Today," Hunter replied. "The circuit judge is in town. We'll ride in, get the license, and be married by noon. Then we'll contact the marshal from Billings." The morning passed in a blur. Emmett found her a clean dress that had belonged to Hunter's sister, and they rode into the small town of Pine Creek with Emmett following at a distance, watching for Blackwood's men. The town consisted of one main street with a general store, saloon, small church, and a few other establishments. Hunter led Brielle directly to a small building with county clerk painted on the window. Inside, a balding man looked up from his papers. Hunter Finley. Don't often see you in town these days. Hello, George, we need a marriage license. George's eyebrows shot up as he looked between Hunter and Brielle. Well now, that's unexpected. Judge Patterson's in town, isn't he? Hunter asked, ignoring the clerk's surprise. At the hotel. Planning to head out tomorrow morning. George pulled out a form. Need the lady's full name. Brielle Edwards, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The clerk wrote it down, then looked up expectantly. Parents' names, Margaret and John Edwards. Both deceased, Brielle said, choosing not to mention her stepfather. George completed the form, had them both sign, then handed the license to Hunter. Judge usually takes his lunch at the hotel restaurant. You might catch him there. Judge Patterson was a stern-looking man with bushy white eyebrows and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked up from his steak when Hunter approached his table. Finley, heard you'd left the service. I did, Your Honor. I wonder if you might perform a small ceremony for us. Hunter gestured to Brielle. The judge studied Brielle, his gaze lingering momentarily on the bandage visible at the edge of her collar. Marriage license in order. Hunter handed him the paper. The judge examined it, then nodded. After lunch, meet me in the hotel parlor. They stepped outside to wait. Hunter seemed tense, his eyes constantly scanning the street. Are you sure about this? Brielle asked quietly. Hunter's gaze softened as he looked at her. Are you? I asked first. A small smile touched his lips. Yes, I'm sure it's the right thing to do. The ceremony was brief and businesslike. Judge Patterson recited the necessary words, Hunter and Brielle exchanged simple vows, and Emmett served as witness. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Hunter placed a chaste kiss on Brielle's cheek. Congratulations, the judge said, signing the certificate, though I must say this seems rather sudden, Finley. When you know, Hunter replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As they left the hotel, Brielle felt oddly changed, despite knowing the marriage was merely a legal protection. She now had a husband on paper at least, and the name Brielle Finley. They were mounting their horses when a commotion erupted down the street. 4 riders appeared, dust billowing behind them, and Brielle's blood ran cold as she recognized the lead rider Dawson, Blackwood's foreman, the man who had held the branding iron. Ride, Hunter ordered, helping her onto her horse. Head back to the ranch. Emmett, go with her. What about you? Brielle asked, panic rising. I'll be right behind you. Go, Emmett led the way as they galloped out of town. Brielle glanced back to see Hunter confronting the riders, his hand hovering near his gun. The ride back to the ranch was frantic, Brielle's heart pounding with fear not just for herself, but for Hunter. They reached the ranch and Emmett immediately began securing the house, checking rifles and positioning them near windows. Will they come here? Brielle asked. Most likely, Emmett replied grimly. Boss made himself a target standing up to them in town. An hour passed with agonizing slowness. Brielle jumped at every sound, expecting gunfire. When hoofbeats finally approached, Emmett positioned himself at the window with a rifle. It's the boss, he announced with relief. Hunter strode into the house, his expression dark. They know you're here, he said to Brielle. Blackwood's claiming you were purchased legally and that I've stolen his property. What happened in town? Emmett asked. Dawson tried to provoke a fight. I didn't oblige. Hunter removed his hat, running a hand through his hair. I told them you're my wife now, legally married before a judge. Dawson wasn't happy, but it stopped them momentarily. They've gone to consult Blackwood. They'll be back, Emmett predicted. Hunter nodded, with more men. We need to get word to Marshal Davis in Billings. I've written everything down, including Brielle's testimony about the gun running. He pulled a sealed envelope from his pocket and handed it to Emmett. Take the South Trail. Avoid the main road. If you ride through the night, you can reach Billings by morning. Emmett took the letter, looking troubled. Leaving you two alone against Blackwood, we'll manage until help arrives, Hunter assured him. This might be our only chance to bring him down. After Emmett departed, Hunter and Brielle prepared the house for defense. They moved furniture to block windows, positioned weapons strategically, and filled buckets with water in case of fire. As night fell, they sat in the kitchen with only a single lamp burning, sharing a simple meal of beans and bread. "I'm sorry for bringing this to your door," Brielle said quietly. Hunter shook his head. "This confrontation with Blackwood has been coming for years. You just happen to be the catalyst. Tell me about your history with him," Brielle urged. "You mentioned your partner was killed." Hunter's face darkened. "Thomas Walsh, good man, good marshal. We were investigating Blackwood for selling weapons to hostile Indian bands. We almost had enough evidence when Tom was found with a bullet in his back. The territorial governor suddenly decided there wasn't enough evidence to pursue the case. You think Blackwood bought him off?" "I know he did." Hunter's knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. "That's when I turned in my badge. Couldn't stomach working for a corrupt government." "So you bought this ranch to stay close to Blackwood," Brielle guessed. Hunter nodded. "Waiting for another opportunity, and then you literally rode onto my land." Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between them. For the first time, Brielle saw Hunter not just as her protector, but as a handsome, principled man who had risked everything to help her. "We should get some rest," Hunter said, breaking the moment. "Take turns keeping watch." "I'll take first watch," Brielle offered. Hunter looked like he might argue, then nodded. "Wake me in 4 hours." Alone in the quiet house, Brielle kept vigil at the window, rifle across her lap. The moon cast silver light across the yard, creating shadows that made her jump at imagined movements. Her thoughts drifted to Hunter sleeping upstairs, her husband in name only. She wondered what it would be like if their marriage had been real, born of love rather than necessity. The night passed without incident. When morning came, Hunter made coffee while Brielle prepared a simple breakfast. "I keep thinking about what happens after," she admitted as they ate. "If we survive this and Blackwood is arrested, where will I go?" Hunter considered her question. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I've never had the freedom to choose before." Brielle stared into her coffee. "My mother taught me to read and write. I always thought I might like to be a teacher someday." "You'd be good at that," Hunter said with a smile that warmed something inside her. Their conversation was interrupted by the distant sound of approaching riders. Hunter moved to the window, his expression grim. At least 8 men, Blackwood's with them. Brielle's heart raced as she joined him at the window. "What do we do?" "I'll try to talk first." "You stay inside, out of sight." Hunter checked his revolver. "If shooting starts, use the rifle. Aim for the horses first. It's harder to attack on foot." He stepped onto the porch as the riders approached, his stance casual but alert. Brielle watched from behind the curtain, rifle ready. Samuel Blackwood was an imposing figure, tall and broad-shouldered with silver-streaked dark hair and cold eyes. He reined his horse to stop a safe distance from the house. "Finley," he called, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Nothing here belongs to you, Blackwood," Hunter replied evenly. Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The woman. Edwards sold her to me fair and square to settle his debts. People can't be sold in this territory," Hunter said. "Besides, she's my wife now." "Judge Patterson performed the ceremony yesterday." Blackwood's expression darkened. "A convenient arrangement. Tell me, did you explain to the judge that you were marrying my property?" "She has a partial brand that never took," Hunter replied, his voice hardening. "What she does have is knowledge of your gun-running operation, knowledge that's already on its way to the federal marshal in Billings." A tense silence followed this revelation. Blackwood's men shifted uneasily. "You're bluffing," Blackwood said finally. "The territorial governor has assured me the governor might be in your pocket," Hunter interrupted, "but there are still honest lawmen in the territory. And this time we have a witness willing to testify." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "Dawson," he barked, "burn them out." Everything happened at once. Dawson raised his rifle, but Hunter drew first, shooting the man's arm. Gunfire erupted as Blackwood's men scattered for cover. Hunter dove back into the house as bullets splintered the doorframe. "They're surrounding the house," he said, moving to a window and returning fire. "Stay low." Brielle positioned herself at another window, hands trembling as she aimed the rifle. She fired at a man trying to approach from the side, missing him but causing him to retreat. The firefight continued for what seemed like hours but was likely only minutes. Two of Blackwood's men lay motionless in the yard, while the others had taken cover behind the well and outbuildings. "They're going to try to set fire to the house," Hunter predicted, reloading his revolver. As if on cue, a flaming arrow arced toward the roof. It missed, but another followed, landing on the porch roof and catching quickly. Hunter cursed. "We need to get that out." "I'll go," Brielle said, grabbing a bucket of water. "No," Hunter tried to stop her, but Brielle was already moving. She dashed onto the porch, tossed the water onto the flames, and ducked back inside as bullets whizzed past her. "That was foolish," Hunter said, though admiration tinged his voice. "But effective," Brielle replied with a shaky smile. The siege continued through the morning. Hunter and Brielle managed to prevent the house from catching fire, but they were running low on ammunition. By noon, the situation seemed desperate. "We need to consider making a run for it," Hunter said, wiping sweat from his brow. "They'll rush the house eventually." Brielle was about to respond when a new sound reached them, many horses approaching fast from the east. "Blackwood's reinforcements?" she asked fearfully. Hunter moved to the window, then broke into a relieved grin. "No, looks like Emmett got through." "That's Marshal Davis with at least a dozen deputies." The arrival of the law changed everything. Blackwood's men, seeing themselves outnumbered, began to surrender. Blackwood himself tried to flee but was quickly captured. Marshal Davis, a stern-faced man with a thick mustache, dismounted in the yard. "Finley, you still alive in there?" Hunter stepped onto the porch, helping Brielle follow. "We're here, Davis. Good timing. Got your message." Davis eyed the bodies in the yard. "Looks like Blackwood decided to add murder to his charges." The next hours passed in a blur of statements and activity. Blackwood and his surviving men were arrested, the bodies removed, and a doctor summoned to treat Hunter's grazed arm, an injury Brielle hadn't even noticed in the chaos. "Your testimony will be crucial," Davis told Brielle as they sat in the kitchen. "Are you willing to appear in court?" Brielle glanced at Hunter before nodding. "Yes, I want to see him punished." "Good," Davis stood. "We'll take them to Billings for now. The trial will probably be in Helena in a few months. We'll send word." After the marshal and his men departed with their prisoners, an eerie quiet settled over the ranch. Hunter and Brielle stood on the porch, watching the dust settle on the horizon. "It's over," Hunter said softly. "Not quite," Brielle replied. "There's still the trial, and—" She hesitated. "Our arrangement," Hunter turned to face her. "About that. I meant what I said. Once this is all settled, you're free to go. The marriage can be annulled." Brielle studied his face, seeing something there that gave her courage. "And if I don't want an annulment?" Surprise flickered across Hunter's features. "Brielle, these past days have been terrifying," she continued quickly, "but also revealing. I've seen what kind of man you are, Hunter Finley." "Honorable, brave, kind. You barely know me," he protested gently. "I know enough." Brielle stepped closer. "I know that when you could have turned me away, you offered protection. When you could have simply hidden me, you married me to ensure my safety. When you could have run, you stood and fought." Hunter's expression softened. "That doesn't mean you owe me anything. This isn't about debt." Brielle took his hand. "This is about choice. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing my own path, and I choose to give us a chance to be real." Hunter's free hand rose to touch her cheek. "Are you sure?" "No," Brielle admitted with a small laugh. "I'm not sure about anything except that when I think about leaving, it feels wrong." Hunter's smile was slow and warm. "I felt something the moment I found you by that creek. Tried to tell myself it was just protectiveness. And now I know it's more." He leaned closer. "Much more." Their first real kiss was gentle, tentative, a beginning rather than a conclusion to their unusual marriage. 6 months later, Brielle stood beside Hunter in a Helena courtroom as Samuel Blackwood was sentenced to 20 years in territorial prison for weapons trafficking, attempted murder, and numerous other charges. Her testimony had been crucial, just as Marshal Davis had predicted. "Ready to go home?" Hunter asked as they left the courthouse. "Home." The word still filled Brielle with wonder. The ranch had transformed in the past months, curtains at the windows, a garden taking shape, plans for expansion. But the most significant changes were within their relationship, as their marriage of convenience had blossomed into genuine love. "More than ready," Brielle replied, squeezing his hand. They had chosen to have a proper wedding ceremony 2 months after the siege, exchanging heartfelt vows before friends and neighbors. This time, when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Hunter's kiss had been anything but chaste. As they mounted their horses for the journey back to Pine Creek, Brielle touched the scar on her shoulder, no longer a mark of ownership, but a reminder of how she'd found her freedom and her future. "What are you thinking about?" Hunter asked as they rode side by side. Brielle smiled at her husband. "About how they tried to brand me as property, but instead I found my way home." Hunter reached across to take her hand, "and I found the other half of my heart." Together they rode toward the setting sun, toward their ranch, toward a future neither could have imagined when fate brought them together that night by a creek in the Montana wilderness.